Welcome, everyone. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on something that affects all of us every single day: the art and science of influence. We're going to explore a century-old playbook that, believe it or not, still shapes everything from our politics to what we add to our shopping carts. You ever get that feeling? You're scrolling online or watching the news, and you wonder, wait, is that my thought, or did someone put it there? It's a feeling I think a lot of us can relate to in this hyper-connected world. But here's the thing. That feeling isn't new, and neither are the techniques behind it. So the real question is, who were the original architects? Who first figured out how to shape the mind of the masses? Okay, so our story kicks off in the early 20th century. We're talking about a group of real trailblazers who didn't just stumble upon influence. No, they turned it into a profession. They built the very foundations of what we now call public relations. And you really can't start this conversation without talking about Edward Bernays. He's often called the father of public relations, and for good reason. Get this, he was Sigmund Freud's nephew, and he took all those deep ideas about human psychology and applied them directly to the business of persuasion. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. Bernays' core idea was something he called engineering consent. He actually believed that in a democracy, a smart, elite group had to guide the public, for their own good. He imagined this invisible government of professional persuaders using psychology and mass media to shape our desires and beliefs. This concept laid the groundwork for basically everything from modern advertising to political spin. All right, next on our list is Ivy Lee. He was around at the same time as Bernays, but his whole approach was a little different. While Bernays was diving into the subconscious, Lee was all about managing the story, especially when a company was in hot water. He's really seen as the father of modern crisis communication. So what was Lee's game changer? It was this thing he called the Declaration of Principles. He basically argued that big companies should stop hiding and start being open and honest with the press. He literally created the first corporate press release, and in doing so, he managed to rebrand what everyone saw as propaganda into something that looked like public information. That's the template everyone still uses today to manage their public image. And we absolutely cannot talk about these pioneers without mentioning Doris Fleischman. She wasn't just Bernays' wife, she was his business partner, an incredible writer, and a PR strategist who was a total powerhouse in her own right. I mean, listen to this. Fleischman's work was so far ahead of its time, she was exploring how women could craft their own public identity, tying together ideas of self-presentation and authenticity. She was essentially theorizing the personal brand long before anyone had ever heard of social media. She basically saw the entire world of influencer culture coming decades away. So with that foundation laid, a new generation comes along. These are the practitioners who took those early ideas, refined them, and turn them into incredibly powerful tools for both corporations and governments. And one of the most important figures here was a guy named Carl Byoir, and that's pronounced Byoir. His genius was understanding that the best persuasion never ever feels like persuasion. It feels like an idea that comes from a source you already trust. And this just perfectly illustrates his masterstroke, the third-party technique. It's brilliant, really. Okay, step 1, you create these front groups that look totally independent. Step 2, you get experts and credible voices on board to give it legitimacy. And finally, step 3, you create what looks like a spontaneous, grassroots movement from the public, a practice we now call astroturfing. If this sounds exactly like modern influencer marketing, well, that's because this is where it all began. So the goal now was to make this stuff permanent, to build it right into the system. This effort was led by people like Howard Chase in the corporate world and Basil Clark over in government. They wanted to take persuasion from being a one-off campaign tactic to a core, strategic part of how big organizations operate. So you've got Chase on the corporate side, who pioneered what's called issues management, basically scanning the horizon to predict how the public might react to something and get ahead of the risk. And then over in government, you have Basil Clark, who was Britain's first ever press officer. He took the propaganda techniques they used in wartime and turned them into everyday tools for government communication. He pretty much invented the modern government press office. Okay, so as these techniques got more and more sophisticated, a whole different group of people started paying attention. These weren't the practitioners, these were the critics, the observers, who were just trying to understand the massive changes happening to society and to reality itself. And this slide just perfectly captures 4 of the biggest thinkers. First, you have Marshall McLuhan, who gave us that famous line, "The medium is the message."
He meant that the technology itself, like TV or the internet, shapes us more than the actual content we consume on it. Then there's Vance Packard, who blew the lid off the hidden persuaders, all those sneaky psychological tricks advertisers were using. You've also got Daniel J. Boorstin, who defined the pseudo-event. Think of a press conference, an event that exists for the sole purpose of being reported on. And finally, Guy Debord, who described the society of the spectacle, a world where the images of life start to feel more real than life itself. Sound familiar?
And this all leads us to a really crucial debate. On one side, you have Bernays' whole idea of an invisible government of elites who are guiding the rest of us. But on the other side, you have thinkers like Noam Chomsky and Edward S. Herman. They developed the propaganda model, arguing that the media system itself, because of who owns it and its need for ad money, naturally filters the news to manufacture consent for the powerful.
So that's the history. But what does it all mean for us right now in a world of smartphones and social media? How do these century-old ideas play out today? Let's connect the dots. But before we jump to the present, it's really important to know there has always been another way of thinking about this. Arthur W. Page, who was a legendary PR executive at AT&T, he proposed a totally different framework, one built on ethics, transparency, and action. His whole philosophy stands as this powerful alternative to all the more manipulative techniques we've been talking about.
Okay, this slide is where it all clicks into place. Look at this. It's a direct line from the past to the present. Carl Byoir's third-party technique is influencer marketing. Daniel Boorstin's pseudo-event, that's today's viral marketing stunt. Vance Packard's hidden persuaders, they're now the advertising algorithms that follow you everywhere. And Doris Fleischman's visionary concept of a personal brand, that's the entire foundation of our modern influencer and creator culture. The playbook hasn't changed, just the tools.
And that really is the crucial point for our digital age. That invisible government Bernays talked about, it's not just a secret room full of people anymore. It's code. Persuasion has become automated. It works through data profiles, digital psychology, and it's built into the very rituals of our online lives. So the pioneers we met today, they gave us the blueprint for how to shape the human mind. And those ideas are more powerful and more widespread than they could have ever imagined. Which really leaves us with one final and I think critical question to think about. Who, or maybe what, is writing the code that shapes our thoughts today?